The car came to a stop in front of the mirrored tower in the city's financial district. It was another grey afternoon, the kind where office lights flicker on before the sun fully disappears. From the back seat, a hurried man stepped out, adjusting his tie as the driver stayed still for a moment, watching the reflection of the building, the same one where he had once been turned away back in college while searching for his first internship. With the sound of the trunk closing, the car moved on, but inside there was no bitterness, only focus. On the dashboard, a tablet pulsed with red and green lines. In a hidden tab, accumulated earnings, recent dividends, steady contributions. The man behind the wheel didn't wear designer watches or tailored suits, yet quietly helped finance development projects on the very street he chauffeured through. That night, the markets would close in the green, and one of the largest individual investors in that fund, hidden among thousands of client IDs, would still be driving across the city, picking up passengers who thought they understood the game. But he was the one slowly rewriting the rules. Before the steering wheel came the numbers, old notebooks with torn pages where he wrote down the exact value of each candy sold outside the school. Overdue bills taped to the fridge with a plumber's magnet, long lines at public clinics, and temporary jobs that never lasted more than a season. In his childhood, the number of times the electricity was cut off far exceeded the birthday gifts. He grew up in a cramped house on the outskirts of Atlanta where nighttime noise came as much from neighbors arguing as from the sirens tearing through the dark. His mother, a cook working in 2 households, came home late and left early, her feet aching, eyes weary, but never without a smile. School was more of a shelter than a place of learning. There were dedicated teachers, yes, but always overwhelmed, juggling far more than they could handle. It was there, at a young age, that he discovered an unusual love for math, not for the theory, but for the logic, for the sense that numbers made, even when the world didn't. As a teenager, he applied for scholarships. He got one, partial, at a local community college. He gave everything he had, studied in the morning, worked afternoons, drove at night. When he finally graduated, he sent out dozens of resumes. The replies were always polite but hollow. Not the right fit, they said. Never explained what that meant. He started delivering food on a bike, then borrowed his uncle's car. Within months, he was working full-time as a rideshare driver. His phone screen was cracked, but he had the patience of someone who never expected shortcuts. Between rides, he began watching personal finance videos. At first, none of it made sense, but he kept going. Rewound, paused, took notes. Every new term learned felt like opening a window in a dark room. Money was still tight, but his ideas were beginning to grow in size. He bought his first stock with the spare change from a hard month. It was barely anything, but for the first time, something was his, not by luck, but by choice. The routine was quiet, but heavy. Long nights behind the wheel, eyes always alert to the city's dark corners. The radio played only to mask the silence. Every ride was a conversation he didn't want, a judgment veiled in silence, a courtesy that often never came. To many, a driver was just another invisible figure. Still, he kept going, used red light stops to read real estate fund reports, listened to market analyses through one earbud between rides, bought fractional shares with whatever was left after, rent and his mother's medication. At first, he made mistakes, invested in schemes that seemed safe but vanished overnight. A financial freedom scam nearly wiped out what little he had. He thought about quitting, but took a deep breath. Started again. The car was falling apart. The clutch slipped. The AC couldn't handle the summer heat, and the back seat groaned under any weight. Even so, he refused to take on debt. The idea of trading peace of mind for appearances unsettled him deeply. Meanwhile, childhood friends, racked up store payment plans, changed phones with every new release, yet couldn't sleep at night. Many mocked him, said saving money was for people who didn't know how to live. He listened, but didn't answer. He preferred to watch his balance grow in silence. The hardships came in waves. His mother's health declined. Insurance denied treatment. He had to reduce his contributions for a few months. At times, it felt like all the effort was pointless. Then came the first dividend, small, almost symbolic, but enough to pay a bill without touching his paycheck. And that day, something changed. Not in his bank account, but within him. For the first time, he felt he wasn't just surviving, he was building. The year was 2020, and the world had come to a standstill. Empty streets, curfews, a haze of fear hovering over the cities. While most were still trying to grasp what was happening, he did what he had quietly learned to do: observe, wait, and act with precision. The stock market was collapsing. Headlines screamed of global crisis. Panicked investors sold everything. Funds lost value by the day. But he trusted the logic of cycles. Instead of fleeing, he stayed. Instead of selling, he bought. He poured every penny he had managed to save during the lockdown into reinforcing his portfolio. Chose solid companies, undervalued funds, assets he had studied for years. It wasn't luck. It was preparation. Months later, as the world slowly began to reorganize, the numbers shifted. What was red turned green. What was doubt became stability. For the first time, his passive income exceeded the household expenses. Rent was paid with dividends. His mother's medical appointments covered by compound interest. He chose to reinvest the profits. Among the new assets was a small stake in a commercial building under renovation, located precisely in the same area where he had been turned away so many times. No one knew he was behind that purchase. There was no sign with his name. But he knew. He kept driving, not out of necessity but by choice. The car became his space to reflect. There, between traffic lights and familiar routes, he reorganized ideas, shaped plans, watched the habits of those who still believed they were above him. He didn't need to prove anything anymore, but he didn't want to stop either. Because now every mile driven carried a new meaning. It was no longer about rides, it was about victory. Over time, his balance grew. His portfolio diversified. One by one, the financial goals were reached, but none of it was flaunted. He still drove the same car, wore the same worn-out shoes, kept the same observant gaze on every route. The difference now was within. He had time. Time to care for his mother slowly, time to read slowly, without the urgency of understanding everything in one sitting. Time to never again bow to any humiliation dressed as kindness. People still judged him by the wheel, by the color of his skin, by the absence of status symbols. And he let them. He had learned there's a quiet power in being underestimated, because while others pointed at his simplicity, he expanded his freedom. One morning, he dropped off an executive at the entrance of one of the buildings he helped finance. No one noticed, no one would ever know, but he did. It felt like closing a chapter without saying a single word. There was no resentment, only understanding. That a person's worth isn't measured by how much they shine, but by how steady they remain when no one's watching. And that true wealth is no longer needing to pretend in order to be respected. In a city that never stops, he kept moving forward. But now, for the first time, he wasn't just along for the ride. He was the one choosing the destination. If this story touched something in you, consider subscribing to the channel. Here, every hidden memory is a chance to begin again with dignity. And every story is a reminder that even the quietest paths carry strength. Now discover the story of the man they mocked as a dreamer janitor, until he showed what he bought at the city auction. Click the video and prepare to be surprised.